Welcome to this week's episode of the Jewish Diaspora Report. On this week's episode, we are making peace in the Middle East. Let's get started. For those listeners who have listened to the last few of our podcast episodes, you've noticed that things have been kind of a downer for some time now. It's all about war and conflict and ceasefires. There's a lot of negative stuff going on in the Middle East right now. But there actually might be something that you are less aware of that is a little bit more hopeful. Now, you can ask yourself why you're not hearing about this as much. Maybe it's because the media really doesn't care about peace and they essentially just want war, especially when they can demonize Israel for it. But there's been a lot of very important news coming out that you probably haven't heard. So on this week's episode, I wanted to talk a little bit more about this happier news, the fact that we may see peace in the Middle East, something that everyone has dreamed about for 70 plus years. And it seems like we're almost there. For some of my long-term listeners from a while back, you might remember in 2023 we had done an episode called Peace is Leaving the Palestinians Behind. It's episode 75 if you want to go listen to it. I apologize in advance if my quality of podcasts was not as good back in 2023. But in this episode, we talked a little bit about the peace process over the many years that Israel has existed, going from the very famous Arab 3 no's, no peace with Israel, no negotiation with Israel, and no recognition of Israel, which had been the policy of the Middle East pretty much since Israel existed. Then we saw places like Jordan and Egypt make peace with Israel, that despite some rocky times, has held. And most notably, the biggest news in the Middle East for decades was when the US, under President Donald Trump, created the Abraham Accords, where they brought a number of Arab states who used to not even recognize Israel into the fold of normalizing and trading and being peaceful with Israel. So rightfully so, in 2020, when the US announced the Abraham Accords under President Donald Trump, the United States, Bahrain, Israel, United Arab Emirates, Morocco, and Sudan finally made a normalization deal, and it has been going incredibly well since then. It is in the news recently that there's going to be possibly another Abraham Accords, or maybe Abraham Accords 2.0, or we're just going to have the other groups sign on to the original. Either way, this is something that isn't in the news much, but it is incredibly important. It could be peace in the Middle East, finally. It is not a surprise to most of my listeners, anyone who's been listening since before October 7th, that Saudi Arabia is on the cusp of making a peace deal with Israel, or at least a normalization deal. We knew this long before October 7th, and it is literally the reason why October 7th happened. Iran purposely told the Hamas terrorists to do this in order to derail the peace negotiations, which unfortunately did work, but just temporarily. The reason why Iran had to do this is because they knew that the Saudi Arabians, as well as anybody else who might consider joining the peace deal, would have to put it on pause. As long as Israel is bombing other Arabs, is bombing Gazans, is not creating a Palestinian state that none of them actually want, as long as that is going on, there is no peace deal to be made. And so Iran purposefully did that, and it technically worked temporarily. But pretty quickly after the October 7th event, the Saudi Arabian prince made sure to mention that he is still on board for normalization. It would have to be after this conflict ends, which might be another reason why Hamas is refusing to end it. But the Saudis are saying very clearly that they will normalize with Israel. Of course, this goes without saying that they will probably put inside this deal something like, quote, a pathway towards a Palestinian state, because they have to pay lip service like every other group that has made a deal with Israel, none of which has actually led to any type of Palestinian state because none of them really care about the Gazans or the people of the West Bank. They just have to do it to pay lip service to the other Arabs in the region. So now that it seems like the war in Gaza is probably coming to an end in the near future, whether Hamas surrenders or Hamas is destroyed, but either way, it seems like the Saudis are getting ready to create the next step towards peace. So this one, the Saudi Arabian peace deal, is not exactly big news. So why are we talking about it? Well, it would be nice for it to happen. The Saudis and the Israelis, if you listen to our last podcast, have been working together for years, behind the scenes, of course. So it would be nice to finally see this deal made officially in public. But the bigger news that we really need to talk about is the fact that there's discussion, finally, that Syria is possibly going to be a part of the Abraham Accords. Now, this is something that would never be on my bingo card from a year or two ago. A year or two ago, we had a hostile government backed by Iran in Syria. We've now seen the fall of that regime and the end of the Iranian occupation of that country. And we did see a little bit of a hesitation of not being sure what that country had in store for the future. But it appears as though the Syrians are actually looking to make peace and be a part of the Abraham Accords. According to some reports, it is being talked about between Israel, Syria, and the United States directly that Syria will recognize Israel's right to exist. They will have friendly relations. There will be some decisions on the borders. But interestingly, Syria is not making a claim that they deserve to get the Golan Heights back. They have accepted, amazingly, that the Golan Heights will remain part of Israel, something that Israel would never give up. The reason for this, of course, is because the area of the Golan Heights is a high spot and has been used to attack Israel over the years, and so Israel needs to maintain this region for safety reasons. But Syria is not even complaining. Syria is only asking that Israel remove themselves from the areas they had taken, this old buffer zone that used to be between the two countries, and back out and have a peaceful border. This is something that's remarkable. There is one more little caveat, which is that Lebanon has a piece of its land that Syria wants back. And in order to make this deal, Syria is asking that they get a piece of Lebanon's land that Syria believes should be theirs. Now, I won't go into the long history of Syria and Lebanon. Syria, for the last little while, has always believed that Lebanon kind of isn't even a country, and that Syria has a right to go in and take anything they want, harass the locals, whatever it was. But now they're going to have official borders, and with a little bit of land swaps, they're hoping that Lebanon would agree to, either thanks to the US or the Israelis to broker that deal, that we could have a quiet border, not only between Syria and Israel, but also finalize borders between Lebanon and Syria that won't be broken by the Syrian regime, like it was in the past. When it comes to Lebanon, I've talked a little bit in the past about Lebanon and how destroyed it's been, thanks to the way that the French had set it up between the three major parties, the Lebanese Christians, the Sunnis, and the Shia. And unfortunately, they have kind of a failed state right now. So it's possible that this Abraham Accord might end up serving a purpose of stabilizing Lebanon and actually allowing for other Arab states and even Israel to help them in their stability. Since the 1980s, Hezbollah, an Iran-backed Shiite militia, has controlled most of Lebanon, mostly southern Lebanon, but politically, they pretty much control all of Lebanon. Lebanon has been falling apart ever since. And the incredible part about what Israel has done in this last war is they took out Hezbollah, including their leadership. They've also taken out Syria, which was the passageway to get weapons from Iran to Lebanon and Hezbollah. And Iran itself is so weakened they can't even help anyone left in Lebanon. So it is precisely because of this reason, the fact that Lebanese Hezbollah is completely ruined and there's no way to support them, that the Lebanese government, the Christians and the Sunni, are actually considering joining the Abraham Accords. The Abraham Accords that would see peace between Lebanon and Israel for the first time ever. Not only would this provide stability for that country, but it would allow for other Arab nations who are allied with Lebanon to support them in ensuring that Hezbollah doesn't come back, to stop the Iranian regime from retaking over their country and giving them freedom once again. Before Hezbollah came around, and even before that, before the PLO went in and ruined Lebanon, it was known as the Paris of the Middle East. And that was until, unfortunately, the wars that were caused by the PLO and then Hezbollah. That could come into fruition again. This possible collaboration between Israel and many of these Arab states could be a betterment for every country around the region. Everybody who's making sure that their countries are better off with trade, no war, peace, freedom. There are other Sunni states that really are a little bit hesitant to piss off Iran by signing on to the Abraham Accords. and they're sort of waiting for their big brother, Saudi Arabia, to finally do it. So there are a number of other countries that could also sign on once Saudi Arabia officially does, or maybe they would sign on to Abraham Accords 3.0 once the Saudi Arabians officially sign on the dotted line. But there's one country that I don't think anybody would have thought would even consider joining the Abraham Accords. This country, Pakistan, a country that literally on its passport says the words valid in every country except Israel. It says that. Israel is mentioned on their passport. A country that they believe doesn't exist is mentioned on their passport. But let's leave that aside. That country, Pakistan, is apparently flirting with the idea of joining the Abraham Accords. According to some reports, Pakistan's defense minister has been in discussion with the US over joining the agreement. I don't know if it's going to happen. They're saying very publicly that they will not join unless it somehow benefits Pakistan. But the fact that they're even talking about this is something that we've never imagined before. I am positive that just like the last Abraham Accords, the US, through President Donald Trump or whoever the next president might be, could be trying to sweeten the pot for some of these countries, trying to bribe them, essentially, with better benefits, better trade, defense pacts, whatever it might be to try and get them on board. And this is vital because they all have Iran as a threat. And they've seen how Israel and the US have actually put Iran in its place recently, and they want to team up with Israel and the United States. What Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said not too long ago is that he foresaw some type of NATO-style agreement between all the Sunni states against Iran and anyone who sides with them. The idea being that if you were to attack, let's say, Israel or Lebanon or Syria or any of these countries, you would have to take on all of these countries, and therefore Iran wouldn't be stupid enough to do it. So it would neutralize Iran as a threat to the Middle East because it knows that all of the other Arab states have a peace agreement that would require them to fight on behalf of one of the other countries. It really is an incredible opportunity for the Middle East to finally shake off the threat of Iran. And they all want to do it. That's why the Saudis have been talking about it for years. That's why the Arab world secretly works with Israel behind the scenes without a deal, because they all agree they have a mutual enemy. This is just a matter of formality of making it official. And it is really amazing to see, if I can be honest. But even more amazing is what we're seeing in the last few days. With all of this talk about the Abraham Accords and all of these Arab states going to work with Israel and become a better place because of working with Israel, we saw something this week that blew my mind, and maybe it'll blow your mind too. Within the last few days, reports have been surfacing of a publicly made note of a group of people who have been attempting to join the Abraham Accords. You might be pretty impressed by this. Palestinian Arabs. People who claim to be Palestinian, who live under the Palestinian Authority, are looking to join the Abraham Accords. You heard that right. According to numerous reports online, a number of Arab sheiks, people from Hebron, so leaders of the Palestinian Arab people in the city of Hebron, Hebron being a mixed Palestinian and Jewish city, have come out and officially written a letter, have demanded that they want to break away from the Palestinian Authority, the people who currently control them, the leaders of the, quote, Palestinian Arabs. They want their own Abraham Accord style deal with Israel, and they want to call it the Emirates of Hebron. Essentially, they are done waiting for the Palestinian Authority or Hamas or any leadership that has failed them for this long, and they want to do it themselves. They want to create their own peace deals separate from their fake, corrupt leadership. Now, this blew my mind. The reason it blows my mind is because we have heard from everybody endlessly about how the Palestinian Authority is the only group of people we can make a deal with. We need a two-state solution. Meanwhile, the Palestinian Arabs themselves have essentially given up on the Palestinian Authority, which we kind of already knew. But the fact that they're willing to make their own side deals and take themselves out of a Palestinian state because they are so unhappy with how it is run is pretty incredible. Many years ago, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, said something that was very profound. In the past, Israel has tried to negotiate with the Palestinian Arabs in order to create a state, and then go to the Arab world in order to say, we've made peace, now you make peace with us. He said he was going to change that around, where he would make peace with all of the Arab states first, and then have them help make a deal with the Palestinian Arabs. Peace with the Arab world as a whole does not need to be reliant on the Palestinian Arab situation being figured out. And you could see it actually happening in action right now. So much so that all of the talk of Abraham Accords has made the Palestinian Arabs want to make a deal for themselves, free of the Palestinian Authority. They no longer want to subscribe to the corrupt BS that stopped them from having a state for so many years. This possibility for peace in the Arab world, but also within the Palestinian Arab people, is something we've never seen before. In the end, I wonder how many of my listeners have spent all of this time hearing about the issues in Gaza and the issue in the West Bank or Judea and Samaria, and haven't heard anything about any of these peace deals. The possibility for peace in the Middle East is within reach, and it feels like it's pretty much just around the corner. Once these peace deals are negotiated, and then when Gaza finishes and the Saudis and the UAE go into Gaza in order to make it a terror-free zone, a free place for Arabs to live, hopefully peacefully forever, possibly even with peaceful borders that allow people to go back and forth from Israel to Gaza, Gaza to Israel. This all stems from the Abraham Accords and the fact that the Middle East is now officially turning towards peace and away from war. Anybody who still wants war after peace has been made will be singled out and will have a very big threat of all of the peaceful nations, Arab, Jewish, and American, looking at them and calling them out for what they're doing. And something that is really surprising, unlike Gaza, where we know Hamas is going to be kicked out because they are a terrible people who mistreat their own as well as Israelis, we are now seeing the Palestinian Arab people showing they're fed up with their own leadership, who's providing them with nothing. We had said in 2023 that peace was leaving the Palestinian Arabs behind. And we were right, because now we're seeing that peace taking place. And the Palestinian Arab people are even noticing that they're being left behind. Hopefully, we will see the growth of peace in the Middle East, whether it's all of these states or even the Palestinian Arabs finally giving up on their corrupt government and recognizing the fact that they need new leadership, one that will work towards the betterment of their people and not corruption. And it might help to have all of their Arab allies, who for the many years have not cared at all about them, to finally actually look to finish this problem. I'm really trying not to get too hopeful here, but it seems like we might be making peace in the Middle East, and it's about time. This has been another episode of the Jewish Diaspora Report. Don't forget to check us out on social media at jdr.podcast and check out some of our other episodes on your favorite podcast source. We'll see you next time.